Hi guys, welcome back to Lunatic Astrology. I am your astrologer, Lori Lothian, and this is the lunar eclipse of July 5th that we're going to talk about today. And it's July 4th or 5th, depending on your time zone. And you know, it is a big deal, lunar eclipse. And I want to get into a little heavy stuff about the mundane aspect of it, particularly with the idea of the United States, given that the eclipse is on the US birthday, July 4th, which means, of course, that the eclipse is at the same degree as the natal sun of the United States, which is, you know, pretty auspicious or portentous or a bad omen. Now, the last time an eclipse happened at the same place that the US has its natal sun was in July, on July 4th or so of 2001. And as you guys all know, that there was an actual big calamity that followed that, which was the 9/11 event in New York City. So before I go ahead and go into that delineation, I will remind you of a couple of things, because I do think there's going to be a big political upheaval as a result of this eclipse in the United States, and maybe economic as well. And before I get into that, a couple of bits of housekeeping. All signs will follow this, a brief discussion of what it means for you and your sign. Secondly, if you want to know a little bit more about what I'm up to when I'm not on YouTube, I do a lot of things. I do readings for clients and I teach online classes, and you can find more about all of that in the description box below. And I have a Mars sale on right now, and it's really a deal. And I've extended my year ahead sale as well. The Mars reading is only $97. It's 45 minutes pre-recorded for you. And the year ahead sale, I had a lot of people say they missed the deadline, so I put it back up for another week, but it's 40% off the year ahead reading with me. Alrighty, so thanks for being patient. Oh yeah, like, subscribe, you know, hit the bell for notifications. That helps my channel grow. Let's go to business about the politics of the United States and what's going on now. Now, I live in Canada, so I'm watching it from the sidelines. But I know no astrologer worth their salt is going to ignore the import of an eclipse on July 4th or 5th. You know, same idea. We're really talking about the eclipse. Like, technically speaking, it's happening in the Eastern Coast, Eastern Standard Time at 12:39 a.m. on July 5th, but it will be July 4th, therefore, in like Central Standard, Mountain Standard, and Pacific Standard Time. So this eclipse is going to be an eclipse of the moon, which is sitting at 13 degrees of Capricorn, and being opposed by the sun, which is at 13 degrees of Cancer. So therefore, what we have is a full moon. And this is a partial lunar eclipse. The import of this eclipse comes a little bit from the stars associated with it. The good news is there's Sirius, the dog star, a star spiritual of wealth and fame and spiritual attainment, and very deep and magical star at the 13 degrees of Cancer, where the sun sits during this eclipse. And that kind of is interestingly auspicious, right? Because it's a description of kind of the United States as a whole. The United States' natal sun, its birthday sun from that July 4th birthday, is literally on, you know, a beautiful and powerful and magical and important star in the sky. Now, right across the way on the opposite side at roughly 15 degrees of Capricorn is another star called Vega. Now, the moon at 13 and 35 minutes of Capricorn, this moon across the way that's being eclipsed, is within an orb of influence of Vega that counts. Now, Vega in general is positive. It comes from the star system Lyra. It has to do with the musical instrument of Orpheus, the lyre. It's about harmony. It can be about artistic temperament. And it can be also about very positive things, like being a lot of well-known politicians historically have Vega in a powerful place in the chart. So you could kind of rise to power and be popular with the masses and well known with that Vega star. However, when the star is conjunct the moon, just like in anybody's horoscope, in anybody's natal chart, it can be a delineation of something in the life that could portend a time of falling from power. One of the names of the star in the Arabic world is the falling eagle. And, you know, the falling eagle, you know, is pretty ominous, given that's a symbol for the United States. Again, personally, it can mean public disgrace or a fall from power. And now in the United States, this is happening. We're having that eclipse happen right on that fall from power and the disgrace. And I do want to gently remind us all that we experienced an eclipse on the same angles at the same degrees back in July 4th of 2001, which then became the whole 9/11 and the longer fallout of that as well, which is not just economic, but it was also about complications and wars and everything that spilled out from that later on. So I want to talk about Donald Trump. I don't normally bring him up, but I have to talk about him today. I'm neutral, guys. Don't troll me. I'm from Canada, all right? I'm just going to talk about what I think might be going on here. I had a dream a few nights ago, and I woke up, and the dream was, the king is sick, long live the king. Now, there's a lore, like an idea like the Fisher King story, that when the king is healthy and whole and doing all right with himself, then the whole land prospers. And when the king is ill, the whole land falls ill. Now, I don't just want to blame COVID on an ill leader, mental, emotional, or spiritual. I'm just sort of saying that's a mythic archetypal story. For the land to prosper, the leader is supposed to be doing all right, and vice versa. Now, this is going to likely look like some leader in the world being eclipsed. And the reason I want to focus on the United States, the falling eagle star, Vega, is right there on that moon, is that this is also, if you cast the chart for Washington, D.C., you're going to find that the moon is in the 10th house of Washington, D.C. And using Washington, D.C., Capricorn 10th house during the time of the eclipse, casting for place, is emblematic of the power of the United States. So it's where the White House is. So just seeing that in the horoscope, I'm like, or in the casting the chart for DC for this eclipse, we have the falling eagle, Vega's on the moon. There's an eclipse of power happening, and actually illness and falling ill is another aspect of when the moon sometimes is in conjunction with Vega. So if you're born with that, you could have a tendency for public disgrace, falling from power, or getting ill, so there's a whole narrative there. But if you're not born with the moon conjunct Vega, and we're living through a time in which the moon is sitting on Vega, which it would do once every 28 days, the moon will cross in front of Vega. From our perspective, big deal, no. But now there's a sealing the deal with an eclipse, which will play out for 6 more months. And you can often see with a lunar eclipse, more of an acute window around it, like a 6-week window where the true narrative falls out and we can see what's happening. Now, on an economic front, the 10th house for the United States, where the eclipse happens, can be the house of business or the house of power, both governmental and, just a sort of sense of the business of the world. Businesses like the presidents of companies would be in your 10th house or in the 10th house. So, there's an eclipsing of the business, there's an eclipsing of potentially the leader in power. And you have to add to that narrative that there's something called the conjunction of kings. Saturn will co-join with Jupiter at 0 degrees of Aquarius on December 21st. And it has historically been associated, when that conjunction happens, with the death of a world leader or the near death, like an assassination attempt. And I believe the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan happened in the same year of a conjunction of kings. So like in the same 12-month window around that conjunction, right? Not necessarily calendar year per se. So we've got a lot of things going on here that make me wonder if Donald Trump would step down, being disheartened and chagrined and knowing he won't win. He'd rather step down than lose. That's a possibility. I don't want to speculate about anything else. I don't know that his health is not well, but I kind of had a dream that something was wrong with him. And if it is, then he could step down for health reasons. And if that happens, then there'll be, of course, another candidate running in the Republican seat for the presidency, and we'll see where that all goes. The other thing about the virus too, right now we're looking at, during this eclipse, Mercury sitting in the 4th house of the whole sign house of the United States, based on the eclipse cast for Washington, D.C., squaring Ceres, the goddess of the grain, in the whole sign 12th house of the day of the eclipse for Washington, D.C. Ceres is actually a very interesting goddess, right? She's actually known for foodborne illnesses. And Wuhan market, the whole idea that it may have started there is interesting, because Ceres was close to the lunar eclipse of January 10th that kind of was a precipitating factor for this whole thing happening, and also around the Saturn-Pluto conjunction of January 12th. So she's now in the United States whole sign 12th house on the day of the eclipse. In other words, that's where she sits. And That's the place of things that are secretive and hidden and not being spoken of. And it's also the goddess of harvest and grain and food production and, you know, the cornucopia of the land. And possibly, you know, the old story is when Ceres went into the underworld, she's also Demeter, to rescue Persephone. You know, that's the story. She had to rescue her daughter. Before she did that, she was bereft, and she was, you know, Pluto or Hades had abducted her maiden daughter and violated her. And as a mother, just missing her abducted daughter, when she was bereft, she caused famines and shortages of food and all of that. And I don't know, I'm kind of seeing Ceres in the 12th house on this eclipse as an omen or a foreshadow, at least for most of North America, because it, you know, the eclipse is, like in Montreal where I live, it's the same kind of house situation as it is in Washington, DC. But the emblematic idea here is the goddess of bounty and harvest is in the house of undoing, of ashrams, of hiddenness, of secretiveness, out of sight. It's not a good place for her to be, squaring Mercury in the house of that represents the land. I mean, the homeland of the natal chart as cast for Washington, D.C. at the time of the eclipse. So, you know, food shortages maybe even on the East Coast as opposed to the West Coast of the United States, because when push comes to shove, food growers in warm, sunny, year-long places during the next 6 months to a year, honestly, may just go, what the heck, you know, we need to feed our own people, and shipping stuff across to the cold and really snowy, winterized East Coast may not be as forthcoming, or food prices will be dramatically higher as shortages begin to show up. So I'm not hoping for that, but a friend of mine had a dream about food shortages a few months ago and shared it with me. And I'm like, oh, and that was before COVID, and global food shortages or US food shortages. So it sounds pretty dire. Sorry to not to make it all seem like really depressing, but it kind of is daunting. And I would also say Mars is pretty close to the ascendant of the United States on the, I mean, the ascendant of the chart of the day of the eclipse as cast for the United States. So it's not the US natal chart we're talking about, okay? So that, you know, 11 degree or so Aries ascendant from the perspective of Washington, D.C. at the time of this eclipse is only a few degrees. Aries is roughly four degrees and change away. I call that Mars on the ascendant, but Mars is actually kind of hidden a little bit. It's on the side of the ascendant that makes me wonder if you were to cast it with a quadrant-based houses, it would now be in the 12th house. So there's something, but it's also, you know, technically then with it's a Mars rising. So Mars is rising in this US chart for the day of the eclipse. War is rising, conflict is rising. Chiron's really close by at 9 degrees. You know, there's the wounded warrior archetype rising on the eclipse for the United States, the day of the eclipse, casting that chart from the DC perspective. It's possible we're looking at an attempt to mobilize public, you know, it's like you know, things aren't going well, let's get everybody excited about a war. I don't think it'll work if that's what's happening with Mars and Aries, which is he can be the noble warrior for 6 months. I don't think he'll let anyone get away with that. So Mars is in Aries from June 27th to January 6th, and that's his sign. He's dignified there. So even though it is Mars in his soldierhood, in his soldier ways, he spends so much time retrograde, September 9th to November 14th. And that, to me, that's the inner warrior. Or he's taking back something. Like if there was a pronouncement to have some kind of conflict with another country and things are escalating within the United States, then, you know, there'll be a pullback energy perhaps during the retrograde Mars. And to be clear, Mars only retrogrades in Aries for like this massive amount of time, only spends 6 months in Aries every 30 something years. And the last time was 1988 of July to January of 89. You can go back and look at your own life there. And get my Mars special reading, 45 minutes talking about how your warrior hero can create new direction, action, and power in your life based on your own natal chart and the planets and the Mars return chart and all of that. Boom. Okay. So that's all I have to say about it. I'm a little nervous. That last thing I probably should mention is that Vesta is sitting on the sun at the time of the eclipse. To me, Vesta can be the asteroid of well, she tends the sacred home fires, right? And, you know, she can also be the tender of the sacred flame, like some kind of truth that one must adhere to, some kind of sacred, noble truth for a greater good. And, you know, the Statue of Liberty holding up her torch has always reminded me of the Vestal archetype. Same with the Olympic flame, that the Olympic flame is passed on and kept alive between the Olympian Games. So that flame, that Olympian flame, is on the sun, which is on Sirius, the star that's right behind it all, on the day of the eclipse, which is, of course, on the birthday point and on the sun of the United States. So some sacred flame that might need to be tended in the homeland that is got some spiritual depth and goodness to it, because Sirius, that star, does imbue the situation with it. But the eclipse and that Vega overlay, a fall from power, or a leader who is ill, or a disgrace, or a fall from public popularity, that could be why a sacred flame is involved. Maybe there is a need to return to some kind of home base, homeland, sacred truth. Yeah, you know, like, you know, the United States is pretty much the fractured United States of America. So we shall see where that goes. This is a very powerful eclipse coming at the end of a 2-year cycle, July of 18, of eclipses in this part of the chart for all of us. Last note, Hygeia, the asteroid of health and hygiene, is conjunct the sun as well during this eclipse. She might also be a part of the COVID narrative. We're going to have to go backwards here. There's an eclipsing energy around the hygiene. And of course we've seen it, or maybe she's going to bring, because it's Hygeia, Sun, and Vesta. Maybe the sacred flame is frigging wear a mask. Folks, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. It's not a COVID burqa. It's just a little hygiene. You know, where's one of my masks? Shoot, I would put one on just to like champion the simplicity of, you know, if someone says wash your hands, you go sure, because I don't want to have germs on my hands and touch my face or touch someone else. So just wear a mask. The worst case scenario, it doesn't work. Best case scenario, as science seems to provide evidence of it, it will help reduce the spread of the transmission of COVID. Alrighty, end of story. I'm going to go through the all signs. Here we go. I hope that wasn't an overloading of too much information for you guys, but that's the story. Alrighty, Aries, 10th house. The eclipse is, the moon is in the 10th house. So there's an eclipsing energy here in your 10th house of career and business stuff and power. Like if you're the head of a company, you know, or something like that, that would be your 10th house, or the top dog in a corporation or something. You know, there's so much goodness going on in the 10th house for a lot of Aries right now. Well, Aries rising, sun and moon. I don't necessarily say it's easy, but that power block of Pluto and Jupiter and Saturn have been up there for quite a while. Jupiter since December 2nd, and Pluto since 2008, and Saturn for 2.5 years. And I won't necessarily say that that's been easy for you, Aries, sun, moon, and ascendants, particularly rising sign or ascendants, but there's been a wholesale intensity around your career and your work and what you want to do in the world. So this is kind of the last of the eclipses for the last 2 years that have been working through that part of your chart. And so if there's something that you've been needing to change, or you're halfway through changing, it's definitely time to change it up. What is the true career path and the true calling for you as you want to express it in this world? You know, this eclipse gives you a chance to reflect on that yet again. And then moves on, and you're not going to talk about that narrative anymore. So hopefully, if you want to make a career change of some significance, this is already in play. Taurus, sun, moon, and particularly ascendant. This is happening for you guys in the 9th house. And this can be about your spiritual life, your connection to God, your soul, about religious traditions. It can also be about guides and mentors, spiritual mentors particularly. If you are at all going to school or having an education, in higher education, a post-secondary, then this is a zone of that too. So you might be making the last fine tunings of changes that I need some of this is my pretend beer. You need to look at the 9th house. Is this last eclipse, you know, following the solstice eclipse and now the lunar eclipse, that you're having to renovate and change the house of higher education religion, soul, God, wisdom. And it's also the house of your dharma, like what's your true calling, you know. It's also the house that talks about book publishing, if that's your thing. So pay attention to the last finishing touches. It's a completion. It's a full moon. It's the icing on the cake of the last 2 years of the journey. And if you have made changes in all of those areas, great. But this is the next 6 months that follow is the last big change of that zone of the chart. For you Taurians, I also would note it's a south node that's up there during this moon. So the south node is like letting go, like releasing, surrendering, not being attached to something in those areas as well. All right, Gemini, this is your natal 8th house, and this is a darker, more mysterious place. The occult wisdom is there, magic, forbidden archaeology, mysteries, you know, strange things like that. Investigation and research is very 8th house, as well as Jungian archetypes, as well as simply money that doesn't belong to you. You know, like the bank loan, the mortgage, your partner's money, business partner money, investment money. So money that you just don't physically, tangibly make as an income, and yet you own it or connect it with some other way. So that kind of money and resources as well is experiencing some eclipsing over the next, you know, few months, thanks to the lunar eclipse. So no, it's one thing is it's definitely a pinnacle energy of a long cycle of 2 years for you Geminis who are trying to figure out money stuff, especially if it's jointly held monies or spousal money, etc. So pay attention to what happens in the next 6 months. I mean, you know, there's intensity there, right? With the moon on Vega, the moon in the place where there could be disgrace or a fall, the falling eagle. I would caution you to be resourceful and cautious with your money. I mean, the stock market is not a good bet right now. It is hyperinflated. It's artificially been driven up by money's being poured in by the Federal Reserve and Central Bank. It's a plural, and it's not a real market. It doesn't actually have an anchor in reality. So if you have monies in the market and you can take some out and put it away in a safer place, that would be a good idea. All righty, Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant people. This is a 7th house energy. The eclipses have been going through your 7th house for 2 years. It's been an ordeal of renovating and renewing and changing up long committed relationship stuff. You know, this is the marriage house. It's also the house of friends you've had for a long time. You would say, I felt like I was married to that person. And it's, you know, your clients, if you do one-on-one work with people, you know, like that's the house of other to you. I think that you're going to look at this eclipse as a relief of some kind, the end of something to do with that journey, you Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendants through something in the relationship quarter of the chart. It's possible that a partner could be eclipsed, like, you know, in some way, you know, the person that is the person, your person. You know, I don't want to give you a bad thing, you know, could get sick, but I mean, that Vega piece, the star Vega can be an illness. So I hope your partner doesn't become ill. And I'm not wishing that for you, but you might send your partner to, long-term partner to, you know, prematurely, proactively investigate their health, have a checkup, that kind of thing. Or the relationship itself could undergo a change of some sort. But it's been going on now, and you have to remember, for 2 years, and this is the last, you know, icing on the cake of the theme of renovation of relationship to your primary significant other. And I wouldn't doubt that you Cancer risings have gone through maybe more than one relationship in 2 years, or there was an ending to a major relationship and maybe some false starts with some new ones. Okay, moving on. Or the beginning of a very powerful new relationship as well. In the last 2 years. It's now time to look at the Leos of the world, and you guys are having this in your 6th house of health and health protocols. How do you eat? What do you exercise? What do you do to stay healthy? Because it's the house of sickness, technically. It's the 6th house. And you want to prevent that. So the last finishing touches of the last 2 years on creating better protocols for your health and how you want to feel in the world. It's also the house of work, like my workplace. If you're employed, there could be a change of employment status, an eclipsing of your employment. If you work alone at home, it's the structures, the routines, and the way you do the work. If you own if you're a boss of a company, it's your employees. One may just get the heck out of Dodge. You're going to be an employee eclipsing. So changes in the work for sure. I promise it's not wine. It's an IPA alcohol-free beer because I have had eclipses going through my 6th house as well for the last 2 years. And I really cleaned up my health act. Yeah. So next, let's moving on then to Virgos. Okay, Virgo. Sun, moon, and ascendant, particularly ascendant, you're experiencing this energy in your 5th house of romance. And for the last 2 years, romance has been a challenge for you. You may have been in and out of mute romances. It's also the house of your children. It's also the house of pregnancy. And it's also the house of creative ideas and inspiration and sexuality and play as well. So all of those areas have been going through some sort of vortex, like a butter churn of karma for the last 2 years. And now this is the final touch. If you have somebody in your life after all of that you're romantically attached to, then it's likely going to be kind of a last 6 months in which you can look at that relationship in some kind of new way. And also to remember, even though we have the eclipse on a difficult placement on the moon, basically on the star Vega, which can be combination-wise difficult, you do have the sun on Sirius, and you do have Vesta, the sacred flame. So you might need to tend the sacred flame of this relationship quadrant, this romantic quadrant. Don't let the romance die. Don't get locked into like domestic unbliss. Find ways to rejuvenate the sex life, the fun, the play, the romance within your primary relationship. Don't take it for granted over the next 6 months, you Virgo ascendants and sun and moon as well. All right. The Libra people out there, this is your 4th house, and this is going to be a place of your home, like where you live, your city maybe, but also your house and the homeland, and also particularly maybe your ancestral line and mom or dad being eclipsed by this particular eclipse. And again, it's a mixed bag eclipse. Powerful Sirius, a great star, but Vega, when it's with the sun, can be disgrace, illness, and the falling eagle. If you have real estate that you think you don't want to keep, sell it so that it doesn't become over 6 months the falling eagle. Damn it, I wish I'd sold it before the housing market corrected, right? So be proactive there. This is a lunar eclipse, and it could eclipse something tangible in your life, something like the circumstances of your life. And given it's activating the real estate house, you don't want to be feeling that you lost a chance to, say, sell a property that you maybe not be able to sell later. Now, if you're not selling a property or thinking of it, then you're looking at just literally some kind of change going on the last 2 years around the home front for you. Or if mom or dad are still alive, there could be an eclipse of either parents' health or status with you. Now, it doesn't have to be that they're going to have a health problem. Maybe you're going to move far away from them, and you won't get to see them as often, or vice versa. They'll move far away from you. Scorpio, 3rd house. Okay, so this is your short-term trips and travel feature of the chart. I speak, teach, write, I educate. It's platforms also online. It's the online world in essence these days. And it's also marketing, selling, and merchandising things. It's got a lot going on at Cadent House. Now, it's for you going to mean some changes in those areas, and you might travel a bit during the next 6 months, but short distances, back and forth. You might find yourself developing some kind of marketing or merchandising or selling scheme. And if you are involved in teaching or writing, this is the house of both, especially short-term education, like elementary school as well. Now, technically, during the eclipse, having that moon sitting in the 3rd house with Vega and the falling eagle, It could be an energy that asks you to, oh, and this is a house of your siblings. So if you have a sibling that's alive still, or maybe one, you know, that you don't see that often, well, there could be some eclipsing regarding the theme of a sibling as well. So a sibling moving further away, a sibling with an illness, a sibling maybe even passing, you know, like astrology, let's be real, that can happen. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen to a young and healthy sibling. I'm talking about, you know, this hopefully would feel like a possibility that, you know, maybe a sibling could pass in the next 6 months. In my readings with people, I do talk about death, you know, and especially if they say, well, what about my parent who's ill? And I'll look at the transits, I'll look at the eclipses and stuff like that. So I tend to be accurate, but I'm not saying for everybody who has a sibling, that would be crazy, who is a Scorpio, a rising particularly, secondarily sun and moon. The rising is more accurate. You're going to lose a sibling to some illness or something, but I'm just going to give you the heads up. Now, again, if you're like to teach and write online, this is great, but it's an eclipse. So you might have to rearrange something. It's the last eclipse of the last 3 years in that writing and teaching and speaking house. If you do any divination or oracleship, that's also that part of the chart. So you might change the way you do it over the next while, over the next 6 months. All right, Sagittarius, you Sagittarius are experiencing this in your money house, the second house. I mean, it's the end of a long journey of 2 years of renovating your money house, trying to find ways to make money and to be more, and it's also your values, and it's your voice in your throat, and the things you eat, and the things you drink, and the things you say. So a couple of ways your last of these eclipses may show up as a change of habits around eating and drinking, a change of food style. It could be a change of your earnings style as well. So the last gasp of these eclipses bringing a falling eagle. So if you don't want to change your earning strategy, you may not have a choice. You might have an eclipse that changes it for you. You know, there's nothing wrong with eclipsing the way you earn money, because if an eclipse is changing the way you earn money, there's going to be a better way to earn money. Trust me, it'll look better down the road. It really will. All right, who else? Next, Capricorn. This is your first house, Capricorn rising, ascendant, you know, rising, ascendant, same thing, sun and moon. And always remind you guys, look for your ascendant first, sun and moon secondly. Anyway, so for you Capricorns, it's a first house thing. There's been a long 2-year window of identity stuff going on. Who am I? Who do I want to be? What's my true, how do I want to show up in the world? What do I want to look like? What do I want to sound like? You know, who do I want to be? What's the costume of me for my soul? So that has been going through a lot of change over the last 2 years. It could also have impacted your marriage house, right? Because it's the other side of the coin. So self and other, self and other. And now for you Capricorns, this is coming to a close, and it's coming to a close with Vega, the star on the moon, in the sign of, you know, meaning perhaps, you know, the falling eagle, a fall of some kind. Be careful for your health. I mean, in general, for Capricorn, ascendants, it's been a journey, you know, with these eclipses to attend to your body, attend to your health, be careful with your physical form. Even more so maybe after this eclipse, because the moon on Vega can portend some illness. So be proactive, eat healthy, you know, take care of your body, you know, all the good stuff that, you know, you should do. Everyone should do, really. You know, Mars can bring accidents, and Mars during the eclipse is in Aries. And so you just want to be cautious around that too. Technically, you know, that Mars in Aries is known to create accidents when he's there. So be careful as well, you Capricorn ascendants, that you're not accident prone. The last, but not least two, Aquarius rising. I'm an Aquarius rising. Woo! We've been going through 2 years of eclipses in our 12th and 6th house axis. So it's time for that to come to a final close. And for us Aquarians, this 12th house is probably, I've had a lot of dreams, a lot of deep spiritual awakenings during the last 2 years, profound in fact, because it is a house of enlightenment or moksha or liberation. You could also be a place where for us Aquarius rising, we let go of self-defeating, self-undoing bad habits, a dietary, like don't eat the wrong foods, don't drink the wrong foods. So I've weaned myself off of alcohol now. I was a wine lover. I'm more or less alcohol free. So there's things we can do during these eclipses to do that. Now, the last of the eclipses in the 12th house then is that I think that because it's, you know, eclipses in the South Node axis, it's a real deep, profound 6 months of let go, let God. And, you know, Vega, the falling eagle doesn't always have to be a bad idea. I mean, I'm making it sound better than it is, but the 12th house doesn't out picture things normally in the real world. You know what I mean? It's like, it's more subtle than that. So your dreams at night, again, more deeply connecting to God or spiritual truth or wisdom within yourself. It's the house of past lives. You might remember a few more just before these eclipses finish up in the 12th house. And of course, across the way is the 6th house, the brand new exercise plan, the brand new strategy that you found. Oh my God, if I just don't eat beans, my whole life gets better. I can't really eat legumes. Okay. I think I'm intolerant. I think I have autoimmune responses to them. So fine tuning all of that, the last 6 months of that direction for you guys. Sometimes money that is owed to us or debt we need to pay off can be relieved during eclipses on this axis. I had people pay back debts that they owed me money over the last 2 years. I paid off all my credit card and other debts. I'm debt free right now. So the last 6 months to be debt free, woo! So you could have even a windfall or some unexpected relief of debt over the next 6 months, you Aquarius risings. Last is the Pisces of the world. It's in the 11th house of good spirit that the last of these eclipses is going to finish its journey for you and reminding you that this has been a longer narrative. And so it's not brand new. It's been going on for a long time. In many, many ways, this is a call for you guys to step up into where you want to have influence, you know. There's a call here, Pisces risings and sun and moon, to really step into power in a new way. What does it mean for you to influence the world at large and be influenced by it? You may have changed up some of your friendships and social circles over the last couple of years as well. What else can I say about that? I always seem to run out of energy at the end and not give you guys enough time. So let me just ponder that. I'm looking at some of the angles here, looking at the chart. I'm going to think about that for 30 seconds or less. So, you know what? I got an idea for you guys. Just came up with it. You know, because this eclipse has the South Node there, and it's been for 2 years going through your 11th house of friends and allies and benefactors and great gains from your career. It's been a lot of letting go for 2 years, letting go of old ways of having friends. Some friends probably fallen by the wayside. Some of the earnings and the great gains from your career just haven't shown up. You've had to really let go and let God. And you've had to really lean in, you Pisces energies, into that 5th house. What brings you joy? What brings you pleasure? What brings you fun and enjoyment in life? And, you know, possibly this last eclipse is the last of that energy of you having to really, yes, you want to have influence. You will have influence. It's definitely a part of you. But the solar energy that goes with that 5th house, because it's ruled by Leo in, you know, the traditional style of the chart, is to find that real soul urge within you, you know, to really move into the place where you feel joy and excitement and passion and fun and truth. Okay, you got the energy of that, right? And not to lean into the place where it feels difficult. So that's my advice for you guys. And over the next few months, with that eclipse also angling through the house of children and all of that, there's probably something that's going to happen if you have children regarding your children as well during the next 6 months that comes to light. Maybe something that was hidden, because sometimes a lunar eclipse can bring that which was hidden from view about one of your children into the light of day. And it may not be a great revelation, you know, with the moon being connected to the falling eagle, but a necessary revelation about one of your children to bring something to light during the next 6 months. All righty. I am complete. I hope that was okay for everybody, not too heavy. Please check out the description box below. The Mars special, $97 for 45 minutes of your chart specifically. How is Mars going to bring you new direction in his powerhouse of 6 months in Aries, something we only get every 34 or so years. You may as well know how to benefit from that transit. And my year ahead, I extended it for 1 more week. It was supposed to end on June 30th. Too many clients said to me they missed my email, so it's back in the play for another 7 days. It's been on for 3 months, 40% off, basically what amounts to a 90-minute reading with me. Okay, so I hope you guys take advantage of that. Thank you. And I'll see you guys soon. Oh, that's supposed to be an eclipse. Okay. Lunar, solar, I don't know. It's an eclipse picture.